In this episode, there's a whole lot of this, but not very much of this. Today, we're jumping right into it, starting off with some new braided brake lines. Installing brake lines is fairly straightforward. You just have to be careful of a few things. Make sure you use a flare nut wrench, not a regular open-ended wrench, and make sure you hit it with a little lube like WD-40 to help you break it loose. Okay, now I must have been watching Roadkill before doing this because somehow this simple-ass job turned into a mini nightmare. The flare nuts on Supras tend to warp over time, so they refuse to fit in the new brake lines. I did a bit of forum research and found that people just grab their Dremels and grind down the head of the flare nut to fit, so I followed suit and did just that. After finishing that up, I turned my attention to the fuel system. Our fuel pressure regulator has had a broken gauge for a long time, so we're going to jam in a fuel pressure sensor in its place and wire it directly to our ECU. This way we can monitor it with ones and zeros rather than a feral looking pillar gauge from the 1990s. Once that was done up, I unwrapped another shiny new fuel filter to replace the old one that we found leaking in the last episode. We want to make sure our 2J slurps only the cleanest of ethanol, so getting our fuel system sorted is absolutely key. And speaking of key, I stuck mine in the ignition and primed the fuel pump so we could check for any leaks. Everything checked out with the fuel system, so I started the process of buttoning up the car. Firstly by cleaning up the intercooler. I just used degreaser and some warm water to get most of the gunk out. And no, it won't fit on the Honda. Alright, so I finished up the brakes and then I took to cleaning the front mount intercooler. So as you can see, none of that like nasty, dirty garbage is there. I probably could use a little aluminum polish, but it's not too bad. So I'm going to wire up a plug for this auxiliary fan, which was hardwired in and I cut. So I'll put a plug here, I'll put a plug on the harness side, and then yeah, so let's put that on. Although this intercooler won't be coming off anytime soon, installing a plug here is a smart way to ensure that we won't have any hassles with wiring when doing work on the front end in the future. After the wiring is wrapped up, I mount the intercooler, plug in the newly wired fan, and plumb everything up. Alright guys, that's about it. Pretty much everything has been wrapped up and done. Other than putting the front bumper back on, but intercooler's together, intake's on, exhaust is all on, all the coil packs are on, all the wiring's done. So other than a few small things like wiring up this fuel pressure sensor, I think we're pretty much done and ready to go. Ready to go means it's time to try starting this bad boy up and seeing if we can get some choo-choo and maybe a little so-to-to-to-to-to. Or not. Well, found why the car wasn't starting. I completely disconnected the intake air temperature sensor. Fuel pump primed. Okay, I was wrong. The issue was perplexing. Everything appeared to be in place for the car to start, yet for some reason, it just wouldn't. I pulled out the laptop and connected up to the ECU to go through the base settings and see if I could find any red flags, but there was nothing to be found. I got out and started looking for hardware issues, only to discover that I had removed the old cracked accessory belt but hadn't put the new one back on. Now, I don't think the belt is needed to start the car, but I thought maybe the ignition system required some alternator juice to get going, so I slapped on the new belt. Alright, let's see if she starts. Fuel pump's prime, that's good. God dang it. The rest of the day consisted of basically more laptopping, more cranking, and more disappointment. The next morning, I woke up bright and early to a balmy spring day in the Windy City. But no matter, I was here to make horsepower, and weather wasn't going to be what stops me from doing it. I decided to start out with some of the small stuff that I had been putting off. Here, I'm cutting the lip off of our front bumper because it spent the last few hundred miles trying to occupy the same space as the front mount, and most of the paint is chipped off because of that. I'm using a Dremel with a cutting disc to cut the bumper and finishing it off with some sandpaper to smooth it out. Remember to wear a face mask because, like me, I'm sure you'd want to be eating Nissens on track rather than eating suspended plastic particles in your garage. Then I mounted the bumper back up, bolted it in, and checked the intercooler clearance. It looked great with plenty of space between the bumper and the intercooler. Now I can finally start diagnosing why the car refuses to start. My main suspicion is that the ignition system is the cause of the issue, so the first thing I'm doing is testing the igniter, the DLI, and all the sensors associated with the ignition system. Testing electronics is fairly easy. You just need a multimeter and a service manual. For the igniter and DLI, I'm checking for 12 volt coming through. For the various sensors, you just have to look up the specified resistance range for the sensor and test it with your multimeter to see if it's within that given range. I'm doing this for my cam position sensors, crank position sensor, and all of my ignition coils to see if any of them have failed. All the sensors checked out okay, so I plugged my laptop back into the car to go through the setup again, but my computer had died. Alright, laptop's charging up, so we just got a package. I wonder what it is. Well, actually, I already know what it is. It's the brakes, or rather the rotors, because the box is heavy as well. I swapped in the new rotors, which was quick work. Mackie then joined me for a quick session of ripping out all the old manky wiring for the gauges, turbo timers, and other random accessories so that we could ensure there wasn't any random wiring issues that could be causing electrical problems. By the time we finished though, it was getting pretty late, so that's where we left it. Alright, what's up guys? Today we're going to test a couple things. We're not getting any spark, so we are going to test the igniter, which is what sends the spark, the DLI, which is what amplifies the spark, and we're probably going to change the plugs because the plugs that are in there right now aren't exactly the right heat range and stuff that we need, so we're going to mess with that as well. And yeah, so Peter's going to come by tonight with the new igniter. The only way to test the igniter, other than making sure it gets 12 volt, which we did test yesterday, the only way to test it is by putting another one in. So, sucks, but that's how it is. I have a feeling it's the igniter. So hopefully that's it. Car will fire up, and then we won't be taking it to the tuner. Yeah, we won't. Why? Well, that's a surprise, because there's something coming. Something some of you guys have been asking for, sort of, maybe. Something certainly that, you know, we've been hoping to do for a while. So, until that comes, we won't be able to go to the tuner, and you guys won't know what it is till, like, the next episode or sometime. So, yeah, let's get started. Alright, so first test is disconnecting the DLI. So this little box supplements that box, which is the igniter, and gives it a stronger and longer spark. So I'm just going to disconnect it, and then let's go see if the car starts. I'm not expecting this to really do anything, but I think it's the igniter, not the DLI. So this presumably will just do the same thing, no spark. But start the shot. Once again, no dice. Then I heard the supercharged sounds of Deutschland, which meant that Peter was here with the new igniter. New igniter in, let's see if it starts. And that's a no, which means we're out of ideas. Not one to accept defeat though, I dug further into the software to see if I could at least narrow down the problem to a particular component. The AEM has a diagnostics function built in, so I could test each individual output to see what was working and what wasn't. After hours of work, Mackie and I came to this conclusion. The ECU was not sending the signal to the igniter to fire the coil. That could mean either the ECU has a grounding issue that's causing the ground signal not to occur, or it means the ECU is fried. I really hope it's the former, but for now, we have to sit back and wait for AEM support to tell us what the verdict is. And, until then, the Supra sits silent in the garage.